What's up, everyone? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time for my college football playoff projections heading into Week 11 of the 2022 college football season. Based off, this is pretty much, how the teams played this past weekend in week number 10, and every, week I give you a college football playoff projection to see what the standings would look like based on, those games that happened this past weekend in the college football playoff were to happen next week. So this is simply a projection of what the playoff would look like, but these are just my college football playoff projections. I'm not really predicting them. If you go back and watch my predictions a long time ago, I did have Alabama, obviously at number 1, but they're pretty much out of it now. Ohio State's still in it, Utah is out of it, and then Georgia, they're clearly the number 1 team in the country. But we have had a lot of changes to the college football playoff projections, week by week. Last week we had Tennessee at number 2, then Georgia at number 1. Obviously they played this past weekend, so there's going to be some changes here to these college football playoff projections. But let's jump right into it here with my college football playoff projections for week 11. And here is the bracket. Obviously the number 1 versus number 4 seed will be held at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And then the Verbo Fiesta Bowl will feature the number 2 versus number 3 seed matchup. And basically how this video works, like I said, just give you the top 4 teams, give you my 4 best teams that performed last week, and I will go from there. But let's start with the number 1 seed here for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. I'm pretty sure everybody knows who this is going to be. Basically, it's going to be Georgia, obviously, because they are the most dangerous team in the nation right now. I mean, defensively last week, they played one of their best games on the season, probably perhaps against an SEC opponent, against Tennessee. Georgia is the top team in the country. I mean, obviously, they were ranked number 1 in the playoff rankings, number 1 in the AP poll. This is a dangerous Georgia team that is, in position to win back-to-back national championships this year. And if they do that, I mean, this Georgia team is pretty much a program to look out for in the nearby future. So they're starting to look like, a powerhouse program. And, with Kirby Smart being over there over the years now, he's pretty much changed this Georgia team around. But I thought Stetson Bennett's performance against Tennessee was great, and I think he played his best game of the year so far. Besides the Oregon game from, back then, we know Stetson Bennett had some ups and downs, in those games that they struggled in, but Stetson Bennett really has gotten better. It's now the month of November now, and I think he's starting to really find his groove a little bit as a quarterback. So I give credit to a lot, to Georgia this past weekend, the way they played against Tennessee. I mean, that defense came ready to play. They pressured Hendon Hooker, and they came ready to play. So that's my number 1 seed. My number 2 seed is a lot different. Last week I had Tennessee here at number 2. I know this team did not perform well this past weekend, but, the way Tennessee lost, this past weekend, there was time for a change. And it's going to be Ohio State this week. I think the Buckeyes, I know they didn't perform well. Let's be honest, they did not perform well against Northwestern, but it was not really their fault. The weather, honestly, was terrible for them. I mean, they had, the offense really struggled in this game. CJ Stroud probably played his worst game of the season so far. But, it wasn't really their fault. It was just the bad weather, 40-mile-per-hour winds down there on the road at Northwestern. And it turned out to be a closer game, but it was just the weather. Like I said, it was just the weather that really killed Ohio State's performance in this game. I think, Ohio State could have done a lot better on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively they held their own. I mean, defensively, you could see this team starting to get better on the defensive side of the ball ever since they beat Penn State, a couple weeks ago. They're starting to get better on that side of the ball. This has a chance to be a really good Ohio State team at the end of the year, but they still have a tough schedule on their hands. They still have to play Michigan, which is at home this year. But, the schedule really sets up nicely for them for the rest of the way. When they still have to play Maryland, but that game right there shouldn't really be a big challenge at all. But Ohio State rolling right now, and I got them here at number 2. Now, who will play Ohio State in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl? And it was a tough one here for the number 3 seed. This team, honestly, was really good last week on the offensive side of the ball. I know they only have one top 25 win this year, but that's going to be Michigan. I'm going to go with Michigan here as the number 3 seed this week. I mean, Michigan had to come back, in the second half, obviously. I mean, they were only down by 3, let's be honest, but they still had to come from behind, and that offense started to really click in the second half. Michigan's offense could be dangerous by the time the end of November comes around when they play Ohio State on the road. I mean, Michigan's offense has been really explosive this year. Defensively, they're starting to get better, as you can see. I mean, the defense played better in the second half against the Rutgers, and that really proved to me enough that Michigan should be ranked here at number 3 this week. So I don't think anybody would agree with that though, because Michigan only has one top 25 win this year. Yes, I know they do, but that offense just really, started to get loaded again, and that was enough for me to really put them here at number 3. So it will be Ohio State versus Michigan in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl if that game were to happen tomorrow. All right, who will play Georgia in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl? Now, a lot of you think there's going to be a change here, but no. I mean, this team was on the list this past week. You're probably going to know who it is. You probably don't know who it is, but I just think this team can, win out and also probably make a college football playoff appearance. I'm going to stick with Tennessee here. I'm going to stick with them as the number 4 seed. Yes, I know Tennessee got beat by Georgia, but they only got beat by a couple touchdowns in that game. The rain got, the second half, the rain came in, and that really slowed down the Georgia offense. Tennessee's offense obviously was not really ready to play in this game against Georgia, and I was just really surprised of how that game turned out to be not even close at all. I mean, Tennessee had an opportunity probably to come back in that game, but it didn't happen. Hendon Hooker really struggled. The receivers really struggled. They couldn't get open. But I think Tennessee can win out. I think this is a team that is capable of winning out for the rest of the year, possibly finishing 11-1 and getting a rematch with Georgia in the semifinal of the college football playoff. Even if, I would have gone with TCU on this list, but with Tennessee, the reason why I had them at number 4 is because of the wins they've had this year. Obviously, they beat Alabama, they beat Florida, they beat LSU, and they also beat Kentucky. Some really great top 25 teams. I know Kentucky is not ranked in the top 25 in the AP poll, but they beat Alabama. That's the biggest win of the year, and that's why I still have them here in the playoff race. Now, if they lose a game in the regular season, maybe a second loss will hurt them, and they will probably move out of this top 4. Then I could probably put TCU or another one-loss team. But let's say if TCU loses, to Texas this week, I mean, they're possibly out of it. I mean, I could see them losing probably 2 games. If Tennessee loses another game, they're pretty much out of it, and I can go with another one-loss team. Perhaps Oregon, maybe, some other team, but, we'll see how it goes for the rest of the way. All right, let's make our predictions here if these games were to happen this weekend. We'll start with the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Georgia versus Tennessee in a rematch in the semifinal game. Now, it's a neutral site game. Remember last week I picked Tennessee to win the national championship, and I just think with the way they've been playing, I just obviously picked them, but the way the game went last week, I don't really see Tennessee getting revenge on this team. So I'm going to go with Georgia to win here in the semifinal matchup against Tennessee in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Look, I know Tennessee has a great offense, but it just won't happen if they got revenge in this game. If they were to play this game the next day, they wouldn't be ready to play once again. So Georgia obviously will win that game. Defense will step up, and I think they will. I think it will be a high-scoring game, though, this time. I mean, both offenses were pretty sluggish in that game this past Saturday, so I think it will be a high-scoring game just because it's on a neutral field. Now it's Ohio State versus Michigan. Now, this game right here is a tough one to call. I mean, both offenses are pretty good, but the way Ohio State played this past weekend, it just got to me. It really got to me who really to pick in this game. Now, let's say if Ohio State beats Michigan in the regular season matchup, and if Michigan gets in there at 11-1, they could probably become the number 3 seed, and I think they can get revenge on this game. I'm going to go with Michigan to pull off an upset here against Ohio State in the semifinal. And that would be the first time that Michigan is in the national championship on these videos that I've done over the course of the 2022 season. Now we got Georgia versus Michigan here in the national championship, a rematch from last year's semifinal. Do I think Michigan can get revenge? Yes, they can, but I just think Georgia is still too talented enough. I think Georgia's offense is not better than Michigan's, but I think the defense is what's going to stop Michigan from scoring in this game. I think it's pretty much a defensive battle for the rest of the way. And I think I'm going to go with Georgia. I think Georgia wins the national championship here. I mean, just based off of the performance they had against Tennessee on the defensive side of the ball, I think that's what makes the difference in this game with Georgia. I think defensively for Georgia, they're starting to get better. But Michigan is a team to look out for. They are in that playoff race, and they could probably make the college football playoff. But those are my top 4 teams and my college football playoff projections heading into Week 11 of the 2022 college football season. Let me guys know what you think, and keep subscribing to this channel, and also follow the channel, and stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.